So this is a presentation based on the report on the significance of biofuels that is available on the Trend is Blues website. It aims to unravel and document the reported good and bad implications of biofuels and explain why they are deemed important. So initially, describe what they are. Biofuels are made from plants or a renewable source such as plants. By taking advantage of our many years of expertise in growing plants which contain large amounts of sugars, these sugars can be readily converted using yeast into ethanol. However, that same abundance of sugars makes them ideal for food, and here lies the much cited issue surrounding biofuels, which is to do with food security. But this has led to many different approaches being pursued in order to solve the problem of how do we harness the energy from the sun and convert it to useful hydrocarbons. Biofuels are frequently referred to as first and second generation fuels. First generation biofuels is a term used within the industry to describe a biofuel derived directly from the corn, the sugarcane, and other such crops. Second generation biofuels use the waste product, and these are called cellulosic biofuels. So here are some simple descriptions of the processes involved in making the biofuel. The top shows the traditional first generation biofuel, where simple fermentation of sugars produces ethanol, the byproduct here being carbon dioxide. The second gives a simple diagram of the cellulosic biofuel production. So cellulose is really nothing more than sugar molecules, so glucose, all linked together with an indigestible chemical bond. The challenge within the glucose biofuels is to liberate all that energy-rich glucose from the cellulose. Cellulose fibres contain longer polysaccharide chains than those found in starches and surround them with lignin and hemicellulose, which holds the fibres together and provides strength. This makes them tough, so tough enough to hold up a tree, for example, but it also makes the sugars within them very difficult to access. If, however, it can be converted into a simple sugar, it can be fed to yeast, which will in turn be converted into ethanol. Or it can be converted chemically into a liquid fuel that could directly replace diesel and gasoline. Another example shown here is with algae oil, which involves bioengineering algae to be a one-stop shop so that it can photosynthesize sunlight and then emit ethanol or hydrocarbons. So that's what a biofuel is, why they're important and why they're really necessary. The main advantage of biofuels are in relation with food security and carbon emissions. The combustion of fossil fuels such as coal, oil and natural gas increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere. Along with other greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide acts as a barrier which allows the sun's energy to enter the Earth's atmosphere but reduces the amount that can escape back into space. This trapped solar energy causes global warming and creates an impact on the global climate. The scope of the direct and indirect effects of this changing climate is immense and well documented. To highlight its importance, the UK's Ministry of Defence stated that the predicted change in climate will amplify existing social, political and resource stresses and shift the tipping point at which conflict ignites. So it's very important. This graph here is data released in 2009. The three main sectors are shown here to account for 81% of all end user greenhouse gas emissions, the business sector being 30%, the residential sector being 26%, and importantly the transport sector 24%. If such emissions within this sector can be reduced, the transport sector can become part of the solution rather than just part of the problem, and this is where biofuels come into play. They are, however, not only of interest due to their green credentials, they have also gained much interest due to their potential to reduce dependency on imported oil. Chris Hume, the Energy Secretary, called for quicker response from the UK to move away from imported oil due to the vulnerability of supply caused by the much documented civil unrest in the major oil exporting countries. The issues of peak oil, which although some experts are not in agreement, mean that the supply of this much relied on resource may be in decline. Accepting that almost half of all the world's oil has already been extracted within the last century and that we have seen the peak, it can be argued that complete depletion of supply will occur within the 21st century. This gives a very strong argument for the production and future of biofuels. However, it must be noted that the viewpoint of peak oil is considered controversial by some. So in summary, the ultimate goal that has been put on the shoulders of biofuels is to reduce dependency on the oil-based fuels, which is a significant cause of concern in terms of the environment and security of supply. So biofuels are important, but why do they get such mixed press? Are they good or bad? It's argued in many countries that due to generous subsidy programmes, food crops have been diverted for use as feedstock for first-generation biofuels. This has caused food markets to be in direct competition with energy markets and has caused farmers to devote more time and land to the production of biofuel crops, causing an increase in price for food crops. This heated and international and controversial argument is known as the food versus fuel debate. There is much disagreement about its significance, the causes, impact, and what should and can be done about it. Two conflicting reports have been produced by the World Bank. The first identified biofuels as the most important driver of food price volatility, responsible for 75% of the noted price increases, and the second, published more recently in 2010, stated the effect of biofuels on food prices has not been as large as originally thought, but that the use of commodities by financial investors may have been partly responsible for the spike seen in 2007 to 2008. It would seem, therefore, that the key issue when comparing all arguments within this food versus fuel debate is the technical difficulty of estimating the relative weight played by different interlinked factors that affect world prices. However, as shown in the slide, this issue is removed when using non-food crops or food crop waste, such as with cellulosic biofuels. Another cited issue with biofuels is their impact on water sources. Although not always required, it is accepted that in many parts of the world, supplemental or full irrigation is needed to grow crops, feedstock for the biofuels. So water is also required for the production process of biofuels, which involves boiling and cooling. It has been estimated that by increasing production of sweet sorghum in order to meet the US Energy Independence and Security Act mandates for renewable fuel by 2022, this would increase the amount of fresh water withdrawals by a significant 25%. However, as cellulosic technology develops, ethanol feedstock is likely to shift towards agricultural and forestry residue, grasses and woody crops, and the organic portion of industrial and municipal solid waste. Within a report by Stanford University, this shift is suggested to perhaps have the effect of water quality improving if the emergence of cellulosic technology results in a shift away from mass-produced corn and towards crops that are less water, pesticide, fertiliser intensive, such as native grasses, and towards utilising biomass not specifically produced for energy, such as agricultural land, for agricultural and forestry residue, and industrial and municipal waste. However, this report does go on to warn that water quality improvements in the cellulosic world are, however, not guaranteed. This is because different cellulosic feedstocks are considered to have dramatically different effects on water quality. The examples given using perennial grasses and trees as energy feedstock, which could potentially help prevent erosion and restore lands degraded by human impact, and using corn stover which is the leftover parts of the corn, which could exacerbate erosion if farmers remove too much stover from the ground after harvest, which is shown in this slide. So the result is highly competitively priced oil, which has a high energy balance. It must be noticed that sugar cane farming in Brazil is not currently found to contribute directly to deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. However, there is concern that as demand for bioethanol increases, expanding cane plantations may displace other food crops, such as soybeans, rice and corn, as well as pasture land, shifting these activities north to the edge of the forest and threatening future habitat loss. Biodiesel produced from palm oil in Indonesia is often cited as the bad biofuel. Recent research carried out at the University of Leicester shows that peatland areas generate 86 tonnes of carbon dioxide per hectare per year over a 50-year period. And it is because of the greenhouse gases released during the drainage of peatlands, which is necessary for palm oil cultivation. Demand for biofuel has led to clearing land for palm oil plantations, and in Indonesia alone, over 38,000 kilometres squared of forest have been converted to plantations since 1996. Cellulosic biofuels are included with such concerns, as mentioned before, with the removal of corn stover, resulting in increased erosion. The other issues are with biodiversity. Expansion of farming into monoculture leads to a loss of biodiversity, which makes heavy dependence on biofuels very risky. This is because by reducing the gene pool species, we reduce the ability to deal with agricultural blights. Food crops have recovered from blights when old stock were mixed with blight-resistant wild strains. But as biodiversity is lost to excessive agriculture, the possibility from recovering from these blights are lost. The concern would then shift from the insecurity of oil supply from unstable countries to the worry of natural blights reducing potential yield, and the future of biofuel crops would then be relied on. Next issue is with pollution. Combustion of fuel produces a mixture of pollutants. Although the results are conflicting, it has been reported that when a 10% mixture of ethanol is added to petrol, aldehyde emissions increase by 40%. Burning biodiesel also emits aldehydes and other potentially hazardous aromatic compounds. The concern here is that many aldehydes are toxic to living cells. For example, at high concentrations in an enclosed space, formaldehyde can be significant respiratory irritant, causing nosebleeds, respiratory disease, lung disease and persistent headaches. The concern is compounded by the fact that these compounds are not regulated in emissions law and so would go unchecked. So the future of biofuels. One of the key conclusions from a report published by OFID is that an accelerated growth of first-generation biofuels is threatening the availability of adequate food supply for humans by diverting land, water and other resources away from food crops. This has caused a somewhat hefty dent in the green credentials of biofuels. Second-generation biofuels, which rely on cellulosic biomass, are made by breaking down the cellulosic material from agricultural and forest waste. However, it's said that there is not enough of this waste in order to make enough biofuel. Alternative feedstock has been discussed, however, nothing has happened as of yet. Another alternative is to use energy-rich grasses which can be converted into bioethanol. Within California, they use genetically engineered grasses which grow quicker, and BP has been working with the University of Illinois to produce such grasses. Another interesting biofuel is algae oil. The advantage of algae are that they can live in areas which are not useful for producing food, and they do not need clean or even fresh water. In addition, they use far less space to grow than traditional biofuel crops, and they can double their mass several times a day and produce at least 15 times more oil per acre than alternatives such as rapeseed, palm and soybeans. The added advantage of algae is that about 1 kilogram of algae is reported to be able to be 3 kilograms of CO2, which means that algae oil plants could be positioned out on brownfield sites next to power stations or food processing plants to soak up their emissions, giving additional environmental benefits. The oil they produce is also non-toxic, can be used in any diesel engine, can improve the lubrication in vehicle engines, has high octane number, thus creating a burning capacity for better engine torque and performance. This technology, however, is still in its early stages of development, and the technology required to produce large-scale algae oil is still within research and development phase. So in summary, second-generation biofuels appear to be the future of biofuels, with some showing interesting prospects in terms of sustainability, cost and quality. They are considered by most as the future of biofuels, as they are more sustainable primarily due to their feedstock being a non-food crop, thus avoiding the complications of the food versus fuel debate. Overall, it seems as if first generation biofuels have to be produced within sustainable guidelines if they are to have any future. The general opinion that future of biofuels is with the production of second generation biofuels such as cellulosic or algae. So biofuels around the world. The written report goes into more detail about legislation and production within various countries worldwide. However, in summary here, economic, environmental and energy security concerns resulting from excessive reliance on petroleum oil are forcing countries all over the world to shift to alternatives like biofuels in the form of ethanol and biodiesel. Since biofuels can be produced from a diverse range of crops, each country is adapting its own strategy that exploits the comparative advantages it holds. For example, sugarcane and maize are the main feedstock for ethanol in Brazil and the US, while production of biodiesel in Malaysia is in the form of oil palm. In 2010, worldwide biofuel production reached an impressive 105 billion litres, which is up 17% from 2009, and biofuels provided 2.7% of the world's fuels for road transport, a contribution largely made up of ethanol and biodiesel. Global ethanol fuel production reached 86 million litres in 2010, with the United States and Brazil as the world's top producers, accounting together for 90% of global production. The world's largest biodiesel producer is the European Union, accounting for 53% of all biodiesel production in 2010. As of 2011, mandates for blending biofuels exist in 31 countries at the national level and 29 states. In summary, according to the International Energy Agency, biofuels have the potential to meet more than 1/4 of world demand for transportation fuels by 2050. However, as it has been asked by many experts within this area, it must be ensured that this potential is met sustainably.